I feel like I went on a rant. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Isabel. I really wanted to talk to you about Rouge by Mona Awad today. If you remember in my two previous videos about Mona Awad, I always say she is so promising. She has this gift for the entrancing, but I think that it's until now, until Rouge, that she finally got a balance between having a strange narrative that throws you a lot of information and then closing it up. That's not to say that it's without its faults, but I'll talk about that later. So let's go the way of roses, shall we? Rouge is almost a retelling of Snow White, and I say almost because the points that it picks on the most are beauty and the mother-daughter bond. Our main character, Belle, is a bit stranded from her mother. She lives in Canada and the mother lives in California. They haven't seen each other in a while and they don't talk that much since there is this almost competition. The mother always prioritized her looks and being beautiful.
And there was a moment when they didn't live together anymore, and that's something that Belle has resented. She is also not white like the mother. She is mixed with an Egyptian father, so there is that part into the relationship of Belle not feeling beautiful and this beauty feeling rooted in whiteness. But when the mother dies, Belle has to go and sort her affairs up, like her house and her dress shop.
Yet she discovers that there is no dress shop anymore. Her mother sold her business, her house is in decay, and she seemed to be quite fleeting on her last days. Belle, on the other hand, is also a bit unstable mentally. She doesn't have close relationships in Canada. She's very obsessed with skincare products and with the beauty gurus on the internet. And that's just her life, is the cultivation of beauty, if you might say. The cult of beauty is so central to this novel that I feel that people often get distracted by this. They say, oh, this is a novel anti-skincare, anti-beauty industry, anti-consumption or overconsumption. And it does talk about that, but what I would like to focus on is its strength, and I don't think that's this book's strength. The strength of this novel, it's centered on the mother-daughter relationship and the image of the mirror. So if you are familiar with Snow White, you know that mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, or something like that. In this version, in Awad's version, the mirror is still present and we have this feeling of a dark entity, call it the devil, call it Satan, call it malignant forces, whomever you want to embody there, it's this evilness. And Belle and potentially her mother seem to connect with this feeling or this person through the mirror. But the mirror is also this clever way of them mirroring each other, of them being in connection because they're mother-daughter, because they have this bond and because they have this admiration, respect, and envy. So it's a mirror of one another. The mother represents what Belle doesn't like about herself, and Belle represents what the mother no longer is, young, innocent, etc. And yeah, that's the basic plot. Belle goes to set her mother's affairs after she dies, and she discovers that her mother was involved with a spa slash resort slash cult that lures people in with the promise of youth, the promise of skincare, and it has all their nefarious goals in mind. Through this investigation, Belle befriends some of the men in her mother's life, and while she doesn't particularly want to know what her mom was involved in, she still finds out anyway. And the plot moves with flashbacks. So we have the childhood memories and what's happening in the actual timeline. So the actual timeline is pretty short for a novel that is that long. It's very packed and it relies a lot on these flashbacks and this background information that we receive through Belle's memories. The thing with the timelines, it does sometimes feel like a cheap resource for us to get the information we need, since the mother is gone, so Belle doesn't have the interaction with the mother anymore, but also because Belle as a character, because of what she goes through, she starts losing herself. So Belle is no longer Belle. There's not a lot of us to discover since her mind is a bit foggy through the novel. And I think that goes into my personal reception of the novel. I read this novel while I was in the hospital last year and I was under a lot of medication. So I was foggy too. And I'm also a Belle. And I love a novel that throws you a lot of information at you and doesn't fully close it. And maybe I have said contrarian things in the past, but I think that compared to Bunny, that threw a lot of things at you, like academia and cults and other issues, mental issues, and then never did anything with them. I felt like the issues in Rouge are complementary. Depending on which light you see them, you might get different opinions. And they all are connected to each other. And the thing, and Bunny kind of lack that connection, lack that tightness. That is something that I think Allswell and Rouge share. Yet there were still things that felt unnecessary. For example, all of these male characters that kind of come in as a red herring for you to think and distract you from the actual enemy or the actual plot twist. I feel like the novel would have benefited from with not having them there and keep it the mystery, keep it the mother-daughter, and it was already dissing enough without them, so we didn't need them. That's a common criticism I have seen of this man in the novel, because it's not only one, there are several of them and they're not really explored. Nobody cares about them and they don't serve a function. But also Belle's father, his existence, his background, the fact that he's Egyptian, the fact that she is mixed, none of that is mentioned and explored. So it begs the question, why is it there? Is it there just to create this conflict between the mother-daughter in respects of Eurocentric beauty and the westernized canon of beauty that we have? Or was it to allude that because they look different, they appear to be different in the inside? I don't know. I feel like it felt, I don't want to say that it is unnecessary. I think it was unexplored. And I think there Mona Awad kind of put herself in a tight spot, because she drew these comparisons between the mother and the daughter, but towards the end of the novel, what actually makes a person are their memories in the plot. And with sacrificing these memories, this trauma, your exterior looks different. So this is something that is very important that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, how in Rouge, the exterior changes depending on our experiences. And with the least amount of trauma, with the least amount of emotion and passion, one starts looking paler, whiter, and more beautiful, younger. And if we have a character who is burdened throughout her life by feeling other, by feeling not as beautiful as the mother, by feeling ostracized for her skin color, for even when the mother tells her, oh, I wish I had your skin color, she fully knows that the mother is lying, that the mother would have never sacrificed her whiteness and her beauty, and she doesn't actually think that the daughter is more beautiful than her. All of these moments connected with the outside make me wonder, why are we including these complex ideas of race and the construction of beauty towards this westernized canon? And then we have this other idea of, okay, your memories, your trauma influence how you look, because through that lens we will think that darker skinned people are more traumatized than white people, or that ugly people have ugly feelings, which we have a long ass history throughout literature, throughout cultures, of people thinking that white skin, blue eyes reflect this innocence, this inner purity, this inner goodness, and that someone that is dark skinned is hiding something dark in them, something negative. So I'm surprised this could be a possibility within Rouge. It is. I am not making that argument here necessarily, but I can see how it could be arguable. Especially because if we think of the tale of Snow White, that is the one that I think is the most salient one in Rouge. Snow White was the fairest of them all because she was the most beautiful, but she was also the best of them all. But then if Belle is the one occupying that Snow White persona in this retelling, but she is not white and she is not pure per se because she goes through all of this darkness. It kind of, I don't know, I think the issue of race is super interesting in Rouge, and I would love to hear what you think about that. I don't want to actually argue this position because I don't think Rouge is saying that the browner, darker you are is the more evil you are at all. I don't think this is what the intention is, but it does arise this possibility because of this issue with the skin care place and the memories and how do these shape the outside. That is on race and Rouge. Now I would like to talk a little bit about religion in Rouge because we do have this idea of the big evil, the devil, the negative embodiment that is this idea of Hollywood also somehow related to that. It might be controversial, but Belle has a crush on Tom Cruise when she is a child. So she sees the devil taking the form of Tom Cruise. Of course, if you know about cults and its relationship with Tom Cruise, it's a very big wink and a very big risk that Mona Awad takes right there of making this evil form take the physical form of Tom Cruise. But at the same time, you know, this is just what the little girl, what Belle is projecting into this form, because we see him shapeshift throughout the novel, for example. And the idea of this big evilness or this devil is that the devil is this outside representation of whatever inside of you. And that's why Belle and her mom both have experienced this figure in the mirror. It's what their negative thoughts are: envy, anger, insecurities that are deeply rooted. Those are the ones that they see in the mirror, and they take the physical form of the devil. It might not be the devil, it might be them, it might be themselves. And if you want to get philosophical, it's like, well, what we think of the devil is what we fear from one another. And in this issue, Rouge kind of takes the strands of not religious, but maybe just religious philosophical questioning of what is the devil, what are the powers that we attribute to this deity or this spirit that seems to control us, and how much do we actually have this agency and control over it, how much power we give to our negative thoughts, to our insecurities, and how by not taking responsibility and authority over what we do and what we think, it feeds them. And I mean, and the idea of consumption and feeding also comes in the third part of the novel, that it's the big plot twist, so I'm not gonna go into detail about that in case someone is watching this and still would like to read Rouge. It all goes back to what I said at the beginning of the image of the mirror. For me, when I finished the book, that was the first thing I thought: the mirror. The mirror when they see the devil, the mirror where they see themselves, where they make themselves presentable for other people to observe them. But also the broken mirrors throughout the house, the idea of crossing the mirror. Then we're also in the Alice in Wonderland territory. And we have so much imagery on mirrors and vanity being related to death and the death drive. It's also observed within Rouge of all of these mechanisms of doing the same thing over and over again, trying to combat the pass of time, the skincare, the compulsion of always trying to look your best, of trying to look younger, of putting a mask to not be fully perceived. All of this relates to the mirror. And then what you're hiding behind the mask, the negative, the ugly parts of humanity, how that's all you see in the mirror, and then it takes the body of a beautiful person, it takes the figure of someone you admire, and it promises you things. It promises you a life without pain, without trauma, of a beautiful baby face almost that hasn't experienced anything. And what you pay for is your own individuality. You pay with your own humanity. The pain that others consume. We if we think about celebrity, and maybe I'm going off the trails now, but if we think about celebrity culture, it's so embedded into consuming not only the art that art also flourishes from, but the trauma, the pain of the celebrity's life on the tabloids that, I don't know, feeds their art, feeds their emotions, because artists work with their emotions. So the more they have, the more we can consume it. And we have this in Rouge, is a plot of Rouge. We see this through memory. We see this through connection. We see this through pain and passion and originality. So much of the originality of the characters has to be sacrificed first, and it leaves you a shell, a beautiful shell, but empty nonetheless. I want to highlight what I like the most about Rouge now to conclude, and I think it's the mother-daughter dynamics. I think it is really well done. It's complicated, but it's not. It's dizzying because of everything happening, but just the bond between mother and daughter and grandmother as well. If we want to bring the third generation, again, generational trauma, being female, different generations, that the weight of beauty that we have. I think it's really well done. The plot was I think the plot and the mystery, as I said in the beginning, Mona Awad finally found a balance, I feel, on how to manage, yes, throwing you in a mystery, throwing you in a haze, but also bringing you out. I feel like so much of Bunny was just this whirling feeling that you felt like you were gonna throw up, and there was never a conclusion to that, or it left you with a lot of questions. And Bunny does as well, and Rouge does as well, but I feel like in a more sophisticated way. All's Well is still my favorite of Awad to the date, because I felt like just the plot was a bit more innovative. Now I would like to tie the themes of consumption and grief, because I feel like they are connected in the novel. And I think that through the reviews that I saw in summer or in the words autumn last year, when this book was just about to come out and the arcs were out, everyone was highlighting, oh yeah, this is about materialism, overconsumption, the cult of beauty. And it is. It mostly does this through skincare, and it throws these words that if you are familiar with this world, as I am somewhat familiar with, then you recognize the ridicule, the satire of this mechanics, this over-the-top routines, this overpriced products and syrups and retinol and all of this stuff, and how meticulous one has to be, to the point that they prefer to not go outside so they don't pollute their face with all of this chemicals and dirt from the outside world, and you want to live in a bubble of cream and lotion. I get it. I'm that person. I'm that person too. This overconsumption, this preoccupation with the skin, as I say, to the mask, to conceal. It's to conceal these feelings of grief, unsurmountable grief. It happens throughout the whole novel. It's first the grief or the mourning of losing the father, then the grandmother. The mother is grieving the loss of her innocence, her dreams of making it in Hollywood. There is this allusion, or it is implied, that she has to do these sexual favors, or that she goes into these dates with this ogre man just so she can get ahead, so she can have a chance in Hollywood. And we know that she never actually achieves this childhood dream of hers. For her to grieve and mourn that is to contain the youth, is to preserve her beauty, to guard it like its most precious thing that she might have ever. And I think that is how consumption and grief come together in the novel, because we see that both mother and daughter had the same coping mechanism. Obviously, the daughter, by being raised by that mother, of course, that she wants to emulate this lifestyle. She wants to emulate her beauty. She wants to preserve her own and preserve her youth. But in a novel so surrounded by death, by failure, to have two female characters who are so obsessed with skincare and the cult of beauty, it is only obvious to know that these are so related as coping mechanisms, as a way to deal with this grief. And towards the end, when we see Belle kind of get stronger and come to terms with who her mother was, what happened to her, and how connected they actually were and are towards the end. And we see that then she stops with her obsession. She stops with the beauty videos and the obsessive routines, and she just lets her skin breathe on her own. It's this grief stage of acceptance. And I think that you could track this periods of mourning throughout the novel and how it intensifies this overconsumption, or not even overconsumption, but this preoccupation with beauty. So yeah, I really enjoy reading Rouge. I think that if you're in the mood for something, I don't even know how to describe it, because I don't want to say if you want to read something like Bunny, because it feels very different. I think Rouge is a triumph over Bunny. If you have watched my video, you know that I had a lot of hesitation towards that book. Allswell is my favorite of hers. I will be reading anything that she writes next, of course. But I think Rouge is very special if you like mother-daughter books, complex mother-daughter relationships. This is how I would advertise and market this book, because I've seen it in lists of deranged girl or sad girl aesthetic or sad girl reading list, and I never know what they actually mean, because there are a lot of fonts to sad girl. And here, a professional sad girl talking to you, I can tell you that we're not all the same, and we're not all into the same things. But if you like books with complex mother-daughter relationships, I would recommend Rouge. That is all from me. Thank you so much for watching and for receiving me back into YouTube. The last videos have gone very well, so I hope you like this one. Please, you help me a lot if you subscribe, if you like this video, if you leave me a comment. It could just be an emoji, whatever. It would really, really help. And thank you so much. Please keep reading. And when you're not, follow me on all my social media, link down below. And I will be seeing you next week with another video. Bye! My throat.